Welcome back. The Urban Resource Institute and New York City's Department of Homeless Services have recently launched the first ever pet-friendly shelter in New York City for families experiencing homelessness. CEO of the Urban Resource Institute, Nathaniel Fields, joins me to discuss the importance of keeping families and their pets together during times of uncertainty. Nathaniel, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. So great to be here today.
Now, how did the collaboration between the Urban Resource Institute and New York City's Department of Homeless Services begin?
Wow, big question. Urban Resource Institute, URI, we've been around for just about 40 years, so we have some history with the city. And as you know, we're the nation's, New York City's largest provider of domestic violence shelter services. So a long history with DSS, Department of Social Services, both on the Department of Homeless Services side, as well as on the domestic violence side.
Now, something that's really exciting, and I was actually shocked to see this, New York City recently opened its first ever pet-friendly shelter for families experiencing homelessness. Homelessness has been a long-standing issue in our city, so I'm curious to know, why are we now seeing a pet-friendly shelter?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer that in the here and now. Pets provide that unconditional love, particularly during the time of crises. It's nothing like having that four-legged animal meet you with unconditional love, reduce your stress. And so you think about New York, the world going through a pandemic, and we had the highest rate of pet adoptions. Over 85 million households have pets. So when we start to think about how common pets are, we thought in New York City, it's time for the Department of Homeless Services, particularly for those individuals who experience a traumatic event, to keep their pets together. People and animals living safely is what we call our initiative, and the time was now. I also want to talk about where it really started. About 10 years ago, we started in shelters, our domestic violence shelters. And so the city sort of got its idea from, on the homeless side, from URI 10 years ago. And there we influenced, we pushed, we advocated, because we recognized that many individuals who are victims of domestic violence needed their pets with them, and over half wouldn't seek shelter if they couldn't bring their pet with them into shelter.
Now, I definitely want to expand on that because I thought that was such a touching thing to see. Can you just further speak on to the mental and emotional benefits of having your pets with you, especially during, times of uncertainty, or as you mentioned, for 10 years, working with domestic violence survivors? What have you noticed, or what has the organization have noticed in regards to having people, keep their pets during these times?
Like the nation and so for victims of domestic violence, over 10 years ago, we recognized that individuals would not come, families would not come into shelter without their pets. And we kind of see this again with the pandemic. We saw it with Superstorm Sandy and other crises, that people weren't going to leave their pets regardless of what was occurring with them. And so New York City had to create a response, because we recognize that pets are part of the family. And URI, through our work, through our advocacy, to talking to many, many survivors of domestic violence, influenced the city to recognize during the times of crisis, people and pets need to stay together. And so we created PALS, People and Animals Living Safely, because of that reason. And we work now with about, on any given night, we have about 3,700 individuals we provide services to in our temporary homes. And over 12 of our domestic violence shelters, I should say 15 of our domestic violence shelters, now have places for pets. And we're so excited that Department of Homeless Services is on the bus. So we can now, in our new project, provide keeping people and families together, people and animals together in our new homeless family shelter.
Now, doing this work for about 10 years, with PALS, can you say, have you noticed how things have changed or evolved since then, now that it has actually been 10 years?
Oh yeah, part of our work is to work with communities, whether we're in the Bronx or the city at large, and talking to survivors. We produced in 2021 a report. We partnered with our national partner, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and we talked to thousands of survivors of domestic violence, and we found out so much information, and we released a report. That report has been so helpful to create PALs across the country, and of course was probably part of the reason we're talking right now, to use that data to support, of course, our work with the Department of Homeless Services in this new initiative of keeping people and animals together. So it's an amazing initiative. It's groundbreaking. I'm happy to say our shelter is in the Bronx. So the Bronx is the first ever county in New York City to have a pet-friendly homeless shelter.
And that's so exciting because, as many of us know, the Bronx is usually the last to see, some of these changes. So it's exciting to see that, in this initiative, the Bronx is first. Can you talk about, how low-income people or people who live in low-income areas usually kind of see, I guess, the most stress and, the most heartache when it comes to maybe dealing with pets and not being able to care for them properly?
Sure. I mean, it's many things happening throughout the city. And when we think about the Bronx, it's a beautiful borough with so many wonderful people. And when we look at some of our work in the domestic violence, when Mayor Adams talked about crime coming down in New York City, unfortunately, the Bronx, as it relates to intimate partner homicides, we saw a significant increase, right? And so with that, we started to realize that we needed to do more for individuals experiencing violence and homelessness. And so the Bronx became a place we wanted to put more resources into understanding the data and the impact on everyday individual lives. And so this initiative, when people are at the highest level of stress, keeping pets and people together is an amazing initiative. We provide resources to individuals who come to us in shelter. So when a family comes in, it's truly something has happened. They generally don't have a lot of clothing, a lot of resources. We kind of been in a space for some time, and we provide those resources with our partners. And I must say that our animal welfare partners have been great. We cannot do this work without our animal welfare partners.
Now, can you expand on that? I understand that there are resources provided to pet owners registered in pet-friendly shelters. So what are some of the ways that animals, part of this program, benefit as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In New York City, we started to move the shelter system, 'cause some people really think that shelters are 100 beds in a gymnasium. And it's not that. We are working with the city to build more intentional, what we call nonprofit-owned, purpose-built shelters. And with URI, we're doing purpose-built shelters to incorporate pets. So you'll see grooming stations, so pets can be groomed. You'll see at some of our sites outdoor parks, so pets can have a safe place to go in terms of a park. And when families come in, it'll be the supplies for pets. It's like that parallel process. What we do with humans, we do with pets. We'll do an assessment, we'll have vet services, we'll have grooming services, we'll have food, those concrete supplies and resources. And sometimes the pet has been traumatized too. So we'll bring in pet therapists through some of our partners with the ASPCA and other partners. So whole full services for both pets and of course people.
Now, this is amazing work. Can you just expand on why this is such a significant change in the effort to change the landscape of homeless shelters in the city, and also how people perceive homeless shelters in the city?
So it's changing, and a few decades ago, our shelter system in New York City wasn't in the best condition. And with the last administration, and particularly this administration, we are now building shelters to convey dignity and respect. So when you go into a shelter, particularly a family shelter, they're individualized apartments. So people have that space where something bad has happened to them to come in and feel as though the space is respectful of them. So we can engage them with services so they can heal and move forward in their lives. So it's changed. URI has been an innovator in the space and partnering with the Department of Social Services, and the spaces are very different. And again, it really speaks to that whole healing. And again, we want to move past that myth of 100 people in gymnasiums because it slows people down from wanting to seek services, and we don't want that.
Right. Now, what do you hope to see for the future of this program?
So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I would say when we started with PALS on the domestic violence side, we started in one shelter. We did a pilot. We were good at documenting what happened in that pilot. We worked closely with our animal welfare partners and our city sort of agency partners. And with that, now we're in 15 shelters. We do technical assistance around the city. On the homeless family side, we're hoping that it's a pilot. We want to learn as much as we can. We want to ensure that we have the right resources in place to be able to provide both the human person and the pet with the appropriate supplies and care. And so with that information, we hope to increase awareness and drive more capacity in New York City, taking it one step at a time.
Well, that's amazing. And I just want to thank you so much for joining us and, sharing a little bit about this effort you're doing to help families and their pets in New York. So thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
For information about URI's, PALS, or other programs, please visit urinyc.org. We have to take a quick break. We'll be back with more Open after this.